995 NA for as it relates to the mother, we have a dispositional review hearing. As it relates to the father of the oldest child, we have the initial disposition. And as it relates to the youngest child, a putative father hearing. I think I've got it all. Appearances, please.
Lee Heiss, lawyer guardian ad litem.
Nastasia Thomas, counsel for the department. Ms. Burgess.
Brenda Burgess, foster care worker for the department.
Michael Brooks, I represent Mother Amanda Brayman.
Ms. Brayman, please confirm your presence.
Amanda Brayman, mother.
Good morning, Ariel Berger here on behalf of Todd Knapp.
All right, we do not have Mr. Knapp in the courtroom or in Zoom. By Zoom, Ms. Berger, have you heard from your client?
I have not, no.
All right, so why don't we talk about efforts to notify both parents, if we could please, through Ms. Burgess. Dr. Ames is reconfirmed. We don't have anybody in the hallway either for this file. All right, Ms. Thomas, would you like to lead the one year in the issue of service?
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Burgess, as relates to Mr. Knapp, when was the last time that you had contact with him?
It was in April 24th.
And at that point in time, had he provided, or did he tell you if his phone was going to be shut off or if he was not going to, if you were going to not be able to reach him?
He did not tell me that. I was able to serve him the adjudication order, and I was able to serve him the court report on his phone, and he did get that. And then when I tried to reach him on May 4th, there were calling restrictions on his phone. And when I text him, his response was, I ain't got no talk time. And so then I asked if he could please contact me, and I haven't heard from him since.
Have you attempted to text him since then?
I did. So I received information that Amanda had got, that Mr. Knapp had contacted her, and she provided me with a phone number of a hotel that he was staying at, and she said that his phone had been stolen. And so I contacted the hotel, and I was told that he was no longer staying at the hotel.
To the best of your knowledge, was he aware that his hearing date had been moved?
No.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no questions.
Any questions on the issue of service, Ms. Berger?
None, Your Honor, thank you.
Mr. Brooks?
No, I have no questions.
Ms. Heiss?
No questions, thank you.
Very well. Thank you for your testimony. Your turn to yourself. We'll be back there shortly.
Okay.
So if you want to stay, you can stay.
Okay.
Ms. Heiss, whenever you'd like, you can give us your report.
Thank you, Your Honor. In this review period, I saw both children face to face, and there was a maltreatment in care complaint called in. And interestingly enough, I was standing with the mother and child when it was first going to be investigated. So I had my eyes on the child. So was Linda Edwards. She was there too. So we had our eyes on the child who had the day before been given a little bit of food that he had an allergic reaction to. In the middle of the night, he was up crying, and mother identified it as a strange cry. So she, unlike usually you try and get him to go right back to sleep, she turned on the lights to look, and he was swollen. So she took him to emergency care. And so the next day is when I was there, Linda Edwards was there. The child's symptoms had been treated by mother with the allergy medicine or something. So that the maltreatment in care, I don't know where that complaint came from. I guess it's this: the child was seen for something, respiratory illness, and then urgent care or medical care, and then he was seen for an allergy. Well, that allergy hadn't been treated, and then in came this food immediate allergen reaction, and she got the medication and treatment. So I think there's a confusion between I think the mother did treat this. I mean, there were boils, she says, that the face was swollen, the hands were swollen, and mother definitely knew that that was an emergency and got the child help. But I think there's some confusion in the complaint, so that I don't find that, I think the child is fine. I saw him after the food allergy, and he was resting fine, both alert eyes, sister was there too, and he always looks up to her and really responds to her tone of voice and that kind of stuff. The older child I saw 2 times in preparation for today. One is in her placement home and one is with her mother. I specifically went to talk to mother about the fact that the older child is really feeling responsible for mom when she's not there, really worrying that mom will sleep or have a seizure. So I say, will have a seizure and the baby will cry and mom won't be able to respond. That's a fear of the older child. So the older child wanted to say that to mom. So then when the older child went to get herself something to eat in the kitchen, I was starting to explain to mom, could we maybe choose what information the child gets, or what's appropriate for her level, considering her level of fears. When the child came back in to join us, mom told me about a police report where she was having some boyfriend come over on weekends, and ends up he was not sober one time and exposed himself to her, and the police were called. That's when the 13-year-old was back in the room. I'm absolutely going to work with the team to make sure that this child, who is doing very well in placement, I mean, I think I'm wondering about a second look at some of her diagnosis. She's doing so well in this home where she doesn't baby talk. When she's in her placement, she speaks. She is respectful about other people. She doesn't do this lip beating and stuff that she does around mom. When she's around mom, she's so worried about mom and so worried. I just think that we need to, the CMH care provider was coming in right as I was leaving the visit, and that'll be another person to loop into a professional meeting so that we can make sure that I don't oppose what's happening with the team, because what happens to one sibling can be indicative of what happens to another sibling. Now, I don't think I never knew that there was potentially a different father for the baby until we found the blood test didn't work for the one person. And now we're getting a story, and I'll ask you to consider that in Zion's putative father hearing, that his father is unknown, that the mother alleges she was at a party and decisions and victimization, and we are not going to have another father named in that case, is my understanding. So that I think you'll find after the proofs today that Zion's father is unknown. Before Mr. Knapp was unable to connect with his caseworker, she did go over the case service plan. I'm pretty sure they had a really comprehensive. So when she says her last communication with him was before we moved this date and that kind of stuff, I do think he was knowledgeable about the case service plan and has some limited ability, but okay, so I have seen the children. Their needs are being met in their current placements, but I will say that we have work to do, and I hope we'll do it soon in the next 90 days with the help of Ms. Burgess, have a professionals meeting so we can all get on the same page. Make sure that the child's counselor is counseling along with what the current information is. If she's being given if I have her current information, I know I have reports from Highfields and from Linda Edwards in the court report, but as attachments. So I have received and reviewed that, and that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Okay. Testimony as it relates to the review and initial disposition, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Your Honor. If Ms. Burgess can be recalled, please.
Go ahead, Ms. Thomas.
Ms. Burgess, I want to start with the initial disposition for Mr. Knapp. When you sent him the case service plan, did he reply at all?
He did.
Okay. And I guess the main question I'm wondering is if he had an opportunity to engage with you in developing the case service plan so that it was tailored to meet his needs.
I did have some conversations with him. He provided me the information that I included in the report about mental health, housing, treatment, signing releases. He was going that day to meet with his therapist case manager to talk with her about signing a release, to speak with me. And then when I later talked to him, he said he wasn't able to connect with her that day. And so I believe that we did have a long conversation about services. When I did send him the case service plan, and then I tried to reach him, that's when he said he didn't have any talk time, and I assume that meant he didn't have any minutes to talk on his phone. And so that was the last time that we had any communication. I can add that I did send a release to the mental health agency, and I did receive reports. And I also tried to connect with his therapist to see if, you know, if I could get in contact with him about this court hearing, and I didn't hear back from her.
And at this time, the goal is reunification, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And during this period between adjudication and this hearing, your report reflects that maybe there was some, or Mr. Knapp is already engaged in some voluntary services to address some of the barriers to reunification. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Do you believe that the case service plan that you've prepared would be sufficient to address the barriers to reunification?
Yes.
And you testified just a minute ago of some of the efforts that you have already put into place to assist Mr. Knapp in complying with that case service plan. Is that accurate?
Yes.
One of the ongoing issues in this case may be service. Have you been able to, I guess, or are you aware of anyone who might have regular contact with him? So we can reach out and maybe find if he's still in the same county even.
So he does contact Amanda Raymond every so often. They don't have a relationship, but he has contacted her, and when he does contact her, she, you know, relays that information to me. And I have contacted, I believe it's Hines Behavioral Health Services, where he is receiving his treatment. Those are my only two possibilities.
Okay. And one of the things in your report is about parenting time and the child's therapist in that recommendation. Can you just highlight where the therapist stands for with parenting time right now?
She was going to address that and make a recommendation. It's my understanding that Z would, unless it's changed, would not mind having contact with him, but she does not want to live with him.
For Mr. Knapp's portion, your report cover letter indicates that in addition to the report and the case service plan, you've also included a letter denying membership or eligibility for membership for the United Kiowa Band of Cherokee Indians. Is there anything else that you intend to admit today as relates to Mr. Knapp?
I did at a later date admit the records from Hines Behavioral Health Services, and that was on 5/9.
Your Honor, may I ask the court and counsel if they have that document?
Who was provided that? Counselors, do you have a copy? Ms. Berger, did you receive that?
I have received it.
Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor, I did. I received that on May 9th.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And to the best of your knowledge, Ms. Burgess, are there any other modifications or updates that need to be made to your court report or the documents you provided as relates to Mr. Knapp?
No.
Your Honor, at this time, I would move to admit the court report, the case service plan, and as the cover letter states, the letter from the Kitawa Nation tribe, and then also the Hines Behavioral Health Services document. Okay, and Ms. Burgess, it relates to Ms. Bremen.
Okay,
Let me,
Ms. Berger, do you want to ask any questions now, or do you want to wait until Ms. Thomas is completely finished with everything as it relates to Ms. Raymond as well?
I'll have no questions either way, Judge.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Ms. Thomas, for the interruption. Go ahead.
no, I appreciate it, Your Honor, doing things a little fast here. Okay, Ms. Burgess, on your court report cover or in the cover letter, you indicate that there's a report, the case service plan. You've also included the DNA test for the youngest child, and then the Highfields treatment plan, parenting time observations during this review period, and early on evaluation for the youngest child as well. Are there any other documents that you've submitted since this report that you would like the court to consider?
No.
Before we go any further, all I see is the very top of someone's head where it says Amanda Bremen. All right. I just wanted to make sure it was her. Because that's the first time I've seen her face today.
Very well.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Thomas.
Ms. Burgess, as it relates to Ms. Bremen, how would you describe her level of compliance with and benefit from the case service plan during this review period?
And is compliant with services.
And what about benefit from services?
I think that we are still working on that. I think she's attending, she's understanding, but I think she has some doubts about, how this is gonna, help her and Z.
And so this is an unusual case, and we have one child removed and one child with mom. As it relates to the oldest child who is removed, do you believe that there would still be a substantial risk of harm to her if she were to be returned to mom today?
I do.
Can you please elaborate why?
I think some of the risk has been alleviated by Amanda appears to be, acting appropriately and keeping people out of the home. There was just a recent police report on May 8th where and either a friend or ex-boyfriend or friend had come to the house, and she had noticed that he seemed to be under the influence, and it sounds like he came twice. It sounds like he came once, he left, or she turned him away, he came again, and he exposed himself, and she called the police. So it appears that she's acting appropriately. But I still believe there are things that we can assist with regarding parenting skills, helping her set limits, so that things don't get escalated in the home like they did before, and have them become domestic violence, basically.
And overall, how would you summarize parenting time with Miss Bremen and the oldest child?
Their parenting time is twice a week with Linda Edwards, and Z comes to the house and usually has something to eat. Amanda was telling me that Z actually made dinner last Friday, made burgers. So they're eating together. Z enjoys playing with her brother, seeing her brother. She enjoys listening to music. There are times that Z needs to be, redirected to when she's maybe put on inappropriate music or is swearing or has done something to the dog, or is, inappropriate with the dog. That is sort of how those parenting times go. They have taken Z to the chiropractor a couple of times. So overall, I think it's going okay. And then she also has a visit with foster care support and visitation where there is a lesson included. And there have been some distractions with the TV that the service provider is trying to work with them on, some other things to do besides using television or something more appropriate.
Ms. Heiss's report indicates that there's a distinction between the oldest child in foster care home and with mom. Have the reports that you read, or have you observed that same sort of difference in Z between the two environments?
Yes.
Other than what's included in your report, are there any other things that you would like to highlight for the court's attention?
I can go over the complaint that came in on May 11th, if you'd like.
I believe since it's been brought up by Ms. Heiss, it would be beneficial for the court to know the outcome of that investigation or the complaint and investigation.
Okay. Yeah, the complaint came in on May 11th and it was assigned to for foster care follow-up. I was not in the office and it was followed up by our lead worker, Jill Tipton. And it was found that Amanda acted appropriately. I do have some dates of when she had taken Zion in. Even back April 19th, he had an upper respiratory infection that she had taken him to his physician. May 3rd, she and I had talked about, Amanda thought he had hand, foot, and mouth. And so we talked about him going to the urgent care. And Amanda provided me with documentation that it was a rash related to a viral infection. And so then the complaint came in about on May 11th, which was about him having a food that caused him to develop boils that had turned into scabs, and his face was swollen and red. And the complaint said that she took over a week to attempt to get Zion treatment and medication. So I did get documentation that on May 11th, she did take him to his pediatrician, and it was a rash and other non-specific skin eruption was the diagnosis, and he was given Zyrtec. Amanda sent a text to Ms. Tipton with the date of May 11th. So she took him to the doctor and got his medication on the same day. And then I just want to note that I was in the home on May 8th. Ms. Edwards was in the home, and I'm sure other service providers were in the home, but Ms. Edwards was in the home on May 11th, May 12th, May 15th, and Ms. Tipton made a home visit on May 15th. And Ms. Tipton found that Diane was very happy and seemed to be doing very well. So that it's basically been closed.
Okay, thank you for that. And are there any concerns? Are there any concerns about Amanda's ability to parent this child at this time?
He has, I don't have any concerns. He is receiving early on services where the early on person comes to the home once a month. She's had him to the doctor on a regular basis. He's up to date on his medical exams. He is always happy when I've seen him. Amanda and Linda Edwards did take Zion to U of M for a to see a specialist regarding a helmet, or him possibly needing a helmet, and it is not medically necessary that he needs a helmet.
Thank you. There's a request to move towards unsupervised parenting time in your report. Can you just briefly summarize what that would look like, that transition plan from the current parenting time arrangement to unsupervised parenting time?
That is what we would like to see happen. Right now, C is in school and in track, so it's been a very busy month for her. She has therapy once a week in the home, and she also has a background facilitator that meets with her once a week in the foster home. Aside from her track practices, track meets, and parenting time with her mom, and she's also in Girl Scouts. So it's been a very busy month for her. So I'm hoping that once school is out, that we can work on implementing that. Wraparound is working to, they're meeting with both Z and Amanda to come up with some activities and things where they can practice their skills that they're learning in therapy.
Okay, thank you. And is there anything else that you'd like to say for the record today?
Amanda did complete her psychological evaluation on the 11th. I don't have that yet, but she did complete that appointment.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have, as it relates to the review portion of this hearing, I have no further questions from Ms. Burgess at this time and would move to admit the court report with the
Still have
attachments.
no questions, Ms. Berger?
I have none, Your Honor. I've had no contact with my client.
Mr. Brooks? Ms. Heiss?
Just briefly, regarding the notes from Linda Edwards. I'm seeing a lot of candy, soda, waffles, ice cream, and cookies. I'm seeing problems with the dog potentially abuse, music, and TV. How would those things be monitored if Linda Edwards were there supervising?
I know that the therapist is working on, and we talked about this, Amanda and I talked about this, like what kind of rules would you have? What kind of, limits would you have? And she says that they're working on that in therapy.
And you want,
I was just gonna say that that is something that we need to work on, and I think Amanda realizes that.
and we aren't seeing any skills yet about creating activities and structure during the visit to replace the TV and that kind of stuff, correct?
Not that I'm aware of yet.
In an effort to not have to call another witness for the Zion's putative father hearing. The DNA came in this review period that said that excluded Mr. Murphy as Zion's parent, correct?
Correct.
And then have you ever heard this report before about this experience the mother had that may be the source of Zion's paternity?
We did talk about it. I took over the case in February, and it was sometime in February that Amanda did tell me that.
So before the DNA test came in.
Yes.
So in your report, it says that Zion's father may be identifiable through a friend's roommate and this and that. Have we explored that?
Other than asking Amanda, she doesn't believe that anyone would know who it is.
So you would agree with me that Zion has a father?
Yes,
So are we going to explore, we have a report that is a child from a very violent situation, but we don't know the other side to that, do we?
no,
And if Zion were, so would you be willing to look in and see if we can get somebody named to test for him?
I can continue to talk with Amanda.
Because she says it's her roommate's friend, we can at least find out who the roommate is and who that friend is, right?
Yes,
To at least ask. It just sounds like she has an idea who, at least how we can get further. That concludes my questioning. Thank you.
Right, Ms. Thomas, redirect?
No, Your Honor, thank you. For the putative father portion, Your Honor, I just will make an argument on that portion. I believe that the court report provides the information that our team has. And if Ms. Raymond wants, or if Ms. Raymond's attorney wants to call her to provide information, I will gladly welcome that as well. But I have no one else at this time.
Witnesses today, Mr. Brooks?
Amanda, do you want to testify?
If it's about the situation that I told Brenda that I won't testify about, then no, I will not talk about that on stand when it's zoomed to the public. That's
Okay,
uncalled for.
slow down just a little bit, Ms. Brayman. I understood what you said, but moving forward, if you could slow down, please.
Is there any other issue you would like to testify to?
Well, I mean, yes, I could correct a few things, yes.
What's on your mind, ma'am? What do you want the court to know?
Okay, so, I guess approaching on that subject, I will not say a lot about. It was disclosed to the prior foster care worker, Chelsea Fletcher. So if she did not communicate the situation, that's not my fault. But I did tell her, and there was another worker, a guy named Bob. They came to my apartment, and I did tell them. I went into extreme details about what had happened, and I let them know at that time that I was not with testifying on stand with my son and my business streamed to the whole on YouTube or whatever. And they told me that I had the right to talk about it.
Is there anything else? Is there anything else you want the court to know?
Yes. And then also, no one has ever said to me that Zara wasn't allowed to use the television during visits. So I didn't know that we were supposed to find something else for her to do because no one said that she wasn't allowed to use the television. Someone had said something about, well, what would it look like during visits? Like if they were overnight? And I said, well, we would just do whatever there is planned to do. We're not doing anything special. If you're trying to reunify the child, it needs to be like you're going to be normally at home. We don't have a vehicle. So going out to festivals and parades and all this fun jazz isn't what we normally do because we don't have a vehicle. We don't have people to take us any of these places. So when services end, that's not going to be there anymore. So she has to get used to that. I had a vehicle. It was towed twice. I didn't have money to get it out anymore. It's gone. So that's where it stands. I'm not going to sit here and have all these fun things planned every single time and then her get mad at me when she returns and there's no help to get us there anymore. Then I'm just going to end up back in this situation because she's going to be mad at me and then tell people I'm hurting her again. So yeah,
Anything else?
I don't know. I mean, other than, yes, I did disclose that. And yeah, and nobody has told me any of these things that they want to address. No one said any of this stuff. I think there needs to be some communication if that is a concern. So
Thank you, ma'am.
Yep. Oh, and I did give a list to Jill Tipton on some things regarding the specific placement, but I'm hoping that they can just address them within themselves and not have to bring court into it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yep.
Questions for this witness, Ms. Thomas?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Berger, Ms. Heiss?
None, Your Honor. Thank you.
The only question I have is whether there's a police report involved in this thing that we're not talking about.
No. Mm-mm.
No other questions?
There was nobody to report. I don't know nothing other than mail and possibly a white car and possibly Ohio. That's all I was told.
Okay, any other witnesses, Mr. Brooks?
No.
Ms. Berger?
I have nothing to present, Your Honor.
Ms. Heiss?
No witnesses, thank you.
Closing remarks, Ms. Thomas, on the review dispositional, initial disposition of Mr. Knapp and putative father.
Your Honor, simply on the putative father portion, we would ask this court, we have prepared a motion order and publication documents for a putative father hearing. We would ask this court to consider granting that, given the potential paternity of this child, we would understand if there's an argument against that and will, proceed accordingly. But I'm wondering if it's best to just publish for the putative father in Lenawee County. And if anyone does come forward, then the allegations could be addressed further. And if we need to pursue that or any criminal type thing, then we could do so. But otherwise, we are prepared to file that request for the publication to have another putative father hearing and determine whether or not this child does have a legal father.
So are you effectively asking for an adjournment of today's putative father hearing?
Your Honor, given that we don't have, we had a DNA test from one individual, but we did not provide notice to the general public about this hearing. I think that it would be appropriate to do so. Again, I also would like to respect fellow counsel's arguments on this point, given the allegations of who the putative father may be.
Okay. So, but at this point, you don't have anybody specifically that you would be able to name as a potential putative father.
Correct.
Thank you for the clarification. Any other comments on the initial disposition or the review?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Berger?
I have nothing, Your Honor. I've not had any contact from my client. Thank you.
Very well. Mr. Brooks?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Heiss?
We're not ready for unsupervised visits in any way, shape, or form. We have this child who's in placement, participating in sports and activities and Girl Scouts and selling the most cookies and going to camp. And then we've got visits where we're having a lot of things happen that are preventing her own progress. I would like some time to work on that with the team and set some goals for the family so that we can work on bridging this gap. I would ask you to consider that we have a clue about the child's father, and in the event that this child had to be placed somewhere or this case doesn't go the way we all expected it to go for reunification, I think we will have wished we took a minute to find out who the biological father might be. So I'm against unsupervised visits. We've had this weekend friend decision that mom has made recently that turned south. We have mom discussing, police report. We have.
Okay, for one, he's not my boyfriend. I'm sorry for interrupting, but he was just somebody.
Yeah, Ms. Raymond, you can interrupt. You had an opportunity to speak, and that's passed for today. You're welcome to talk with your attorney afterwards if you wish to, and present any argument you might have to him or perhaps.
All right, I'm leaving. Bye.
Okay.
So although I didn't call her as a witness, I'd ask you to consider that there have not been skills developed. She intends to use the child for structure during the visits, and it is important to me, and I'm signaling to the team that I need to support this. Highfields report is old. I know there's CMH in the house that must have some more current information about what they're counseling this child regarding. Child's doing so well in placement. I do not propose we suspend visits because they're very important to the child, but we're not seeing skills yet. We're seeing compliance with services, but the benefit is not there at this time. So I oppose the agency's request for unsupervised visit at this time, but am very dedicated to working towards that in the future. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have any remarks on the initial disposition for Mr. Knapp?
My understanding is that he was tracking along with this and that we should order him into services and that he's available and wants to do services. His ability is minimal, but I think it's appropriate to proceed to disposition even in his absence.
Thank you. Well, the court finds all interested parties are given notice for purposes of today's hearings. I do find that reasonable efforts towards goal of reunification are being made as it relates to Ms. Amanda Brayman. If she were still here, I would commend her for attending services and encourage her to work on showing benefit from those services and on being a little more positive about what life will be like for her oldest child in the event that she's returned home. I agree with Ms. Heiss on the issue of parenting time, especially given the demonstration that we had from Ms. Brayman today and the incident that occurred with the person at her home. I would be interested in a police report on that and in further information on how this person just sort of ended up there and in the situation that he potentially caused more trauma for the oldest child to try to process. That's certainly indicative of continued significant mental health damage to that older child if she were to be returned to her mother right now, and for unsupervised parenting time to be damaging to her, well, because of that incident and because of what's been described very accurately and succinctly by Ms. Heiss during her findings. I also concur that because Ms. Brayman's not showing benefit from services, that you could end up with this oldest child and Ms. Brayman simply reverting to old habits of parentification that escalates into domestic violence potentially, and that you have to recognize that this oldest child's progress by leaps and bounds is arrested completely when she revisits mother. So that's of significant concern to the court, and it supports my finding that unsupervised visitation presents a risk to the older child. The younger child appears to be doing well, and I'm glad to hear that the mother is making sure he's making all his appointments and bringing him or providing him for visits with the older child. And it's concerning that Ms. Brayman no longer has transportation and that she's relying entirely on the department for both activities for her children and transportation to appointments. We need her to show that she can create a sustainable situation that meets the child's needs absent the support of the department and Ms. Linda Edwards. So as much as I want to recognize her for engaging in services, I too agree that I don't see a lot of benefit here. And in fact, it looks like we're sliding backwards with the loss of the vehicle and Ms. Brayman's absolute dependency on the agency to make sure that the needs of her children are being met. Children's continued placement is necessary, appropriate, and is meeting the children's needs under the circumstances I've described best at this point. We will continue their placement pending further review. I also certainly find Ms. Heiss in satisfaction with her obligations. Thank you.
Thank you.
I reviewed the case services plan and I've listened to Ms. Burgess's testimony as it relates to Mr. Knapp and read the court report. Obviously, there's some significant concerns there with him, but I do think that the case service plan does accurately provide for a pathway forward for him. So I will order that he partake in that and we'll look at his potential progress under that for future hearings and allow supervised parenting time, just with an eye on that to make sure that that doesn't compromise the oldest child's mental health either. Thank you, Ms. Burgess. As it relates to the putative father, we will adjourn that. I can obviously comfortably find that Terry Murphy is no longer considered a putative father. And at this point, we have an unknown, unidentified putative father. But I will allow the department to publish for the putative father hearing, and we'll schedule that to be heard with our next review. Which will be August 8th, 2023 at 2:30 p.m. Unless there's any questions, that's all for today, and we'll see you August 8th at 2:30 p.m.